Welcome to our podcast to introduce you to the Enables project and our contribution to international leadership development research. I'm Petra Buhl, Research Assistant at the Department of Teacher Education and School Research at the University of Innsbruck. Today, Livia Yassacher-Rössler, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Innsbruck and my team member in the Austrian team, will be answering some questions regarding our project and especially the German-speaking context of educational leadership. Her main fields of interest are educational innovation and change, with a particular focus on educational leadership and school improvement. Hi, Livia, it's good to talk to you. In the following, I will ask you a few questions about your views on leadership development, the trends that emerged in educational leadership structures in German-speaking countries during the last years, and how this is linked to our current project Enables.
Hello, Petra. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you here on the podcast. I'm very happy and very pleased to be here. I'm very pleased that we are able to participate in the Enables project as a project partner from Austria. Enables, and I think this is important to know because we use this word a lot, stands for European Art-Based Development of Distributed Leadership and Innovation in Schools. Together with our partner countries from the UK, Finland, Latvia, and Romania, we are challenging different art-based methods for distributed leadership development. As Austrian team, we are working with Vignettes and the design thinking approach, which I think is a very interesting and very, resourceful and interesting approach. More information on these methods can be found on the homepage under Open Educational Resources, where we developed several different resources that can be downloaded and that gives further information on what we exactly did as Austrian team. The podcast that we're right now producing and that you can hear serves primarily to contextualize our approach in the German-speaking world and give some insights of our findings related to this context. Within the project, but also along with other corporations and international partnerships, it becomes apparent for us and for me especially that we often have common understandings related to our research topic here, for example, our art-based methods. But on the other hand, we do serve in different contexts. And for that matter, I think it's important to pay a special focus on the context that we are working on. And I think this is what we actually would like to do with that podcast today, to give you some insights of our context and our approach in this project.
Well, thank you. So let's get started. First of all, can you tell us a bit about the Enables project itself and why you think this international approach is so valuable for the field of leadership research?
Well, yeah, let me start there. When Susanne and Philip asked me if we were interested in working together, I could immediately imagine becoming part of that team. And why so? On the one hand, the topic of leadership training is of central importance and very topical in Austria right at the moment. I will talk about that later. And on the other hand, the idea of breaking new ground with new methods and different approaches in this context appealed to me. Especially in the work of the project Modellregion Bildung Zillertal, where this whole Austrian part is embedded, we have repeatedly tried to use new creative approaches to make the participants' views and attitudes visible and to reflect on them. And I think this is exactly where we see the great potential of art-based methods. The unconventional approaches make it possible to draw closer to phenomenon via physical and creative abstract ways. So in other words, I think it's very crucial and important to find new approaches and new ways to gain insights of, in this case, leadership understandings or leadership approaches from practitioners. What we also experience is that, especially in our case, when reading vignettes, intrinsic understandings and images emerge from the participants' readings. And this is from particular interest for us researchers, because I think, or we think, that this cannot be grasped through other methods. These perspectives help us to understand leadership better, and by this, to offer professionalization that is adapted to this understandings and to these realities. Because I think if we talk about professional learning, it has to be started at the understanding and at the realities of the participants itself, and not with a common understanding. But I will talk about that a bit later. At the same time, I think, and this is worth mentioning, that the work in Enable's project also showed us that school leaders still had little or no experience in such methods that we were using, art-based methods. So we experienced reactions ranging from a very negative attitude towards this approaches to also very open-minded interests from the participants. And to give a bit of the context of Austria, we see that professional development is often still understood as a setting in which there is a lecturer and an audience. So in other words, the participants are often just received as passive, or just seen as passive receivers. Taking one's own experience and perspectives as a starting point, which then are reflected upon and further discussed along theoretical assumptions, is a new and most unfamiliar approach. Regarding to this approach, participants are taken out of their comfort zone, and this is what we really experienced in our workshops. For us, however, this is essential when it comes to professional learning, and this is why we also prefer the terminology of professional learning instead of professional development, because we see the active part of the participants within this kind of setting. And I think art-based methods are really a good approach or a good method to get the participants engaged and address them as active persons in the workshops and in the professional learning context. We therefore took this experience as an opportunity, and this is, I think, another very crucial aspect for the Enables project, that we took it as an opportunity to look more closely at the in-service training and also the whole professional development and professional learning setting of school leaders in Austria. We are sure that this context plays a role in how methods and professionalization are received and how they can affect the everyday work of school leaders. And I think this is related to what I mentioned before, that we see a very traditional style of school leader training, and among the workshop and the ART that we offered, we tried out new approaches, and the reactions of this test or this approach that we used were very interesting and very helpful for us for further professionalization in Austria.
So this, you talked about different contexts in which distributed leadership can be experienced. As an expert, can you give us a short overview about the specific characteristics of leadership development in German-speaking countries?
Yes, well, so when we talk about distributed leadership, as we do in the project, we see it as a collective phenomenon that arises from the complex interactions between all those involved in a group or organization. This is the definition that we are using in our Enables project, and you can learn more about this on our website, and you can listen to another video that explains our understanding of distributed leadership in detail. This is quite a radical approach, especially as many of the parties that are involved do not realize that they are taking on leadership in every school life, every school day. And I think this understanding is crucial to have in mind when I give you a short overview of the specific characteristics of school development in German-speaking countries. Because if we talk about, or if we have a closer look at the training of school leaders in Austria and subsequently at the measures that are taken to professionalize them, we see that the understanding of distributed leadership as we have it does not really exist or is not really covered by the structures of the system and the trainings that are offered. It is actually the responsibility of the school leader to empower all actors to take an active role in shaping the school environment and to assume responsibility and leadership. And I think with this in mind, the training and also the description of what is understood by leadership and what are the role of leaders in Austria is interested to reflecting on. So if I talk about Austria, and obviously Austria is not the only German-speaking context, but as we are the Austrian team, my main focus will lie on the Austrian context. As we talk about Austria, it has long been the case that school leaders have applied and taken on the job without any prior training. And I think this is very important to understand how leadership is framed, but also how the leaders themselves define leadership. So the only requirement for most of the years were that the leaders had to be taught in a public school for more than 5 years. Only recently, school leaders had to or have been required to complete a training course in the first 5 years, which is also a course that starts from the moment on that you are a leader. There is no preparation, or there is no system in Austria, or there was no system in Austria that were a kind of career guidance to the to become a leader. So compared to other countries, we do not really have a differentiated shared leadership setting in schools. We do have some formal teacher leaders, but these teacher leader roles are also only for a few years in the system. So we do have, for example, quality coordinators or so-called learn designers who are responsible for the pedagogical development in a school, but in cooperation with the school leader. Nevertheless, so if I talk about the situation in Austria and the preparation for the leader position, there was actually no preparation so far. As of the year 2023, future school leaders have to apply a course before applying for the school leader position. And this is, I think, about 60 ECTS they have to do before they become a leader. And then when they are in their position, they also have to do the second part of this training. Another aspect that I think is crucial is that school leaders in Austria do not have mandatory in-service training. So if you are a school leader, every training you do is additionally, and you don't have to do it, which I think is, for the professionalization, a very interesting aspect. Another thing that was introduced in Austria that is also interesting for our context is that there was a job profile for school leaders designed. And this kind of profile, or this kind of I don't really know how to say that, but I think this kind of description does not really include an understanding of distributed leadership as we do. It has, and I think that has an effect on the school leadership training in Austria as well. Another aspect, and that is what I already mentioned, is that there's a very less differentiated system of actors with formal responsibilities in terms of leading. And due to this structural nature of the system, an understanding of distributed leadership is less present. And I think this is a context you should be aware of when you run workshops that focus on distributed leadership and using methods to engage people in this kind of understanding. Yes.
With this in mind, how can the Enables project contribute to the existing research on leadership development, and what recommendation can be derived from the workshop held?
Well, I think from our point of view, our involvement in the project helps in several ways. So on the one hand, as already mentioned, we take a closer look at the training and the continuing professional development of school leaders in Austria, and question how leadership is understood there and which aspect of leadership are included in the training and how. And I think just by beginning raising these questions, we create a kind of awareness to this topic. Furthermore, and on the other hand, I think through the ARTs, in which trainers also from the University College of Teacher Education participated, we have shown new ways of approaching the topic of distributed leadership and how important it is to include the ideas and understandings of school leaders. So that what I was talking about earlier is that through our design of our ART, we also stressed out the fact that it is very important to make the understandings and the realities of leading in schools visible, because if you do not have a clue, or if you do not really know what kind of understandings exist along the school leaders, I think training can't really fit to these perspectives, because there is no sense-making process, and if you are not linking the interventions or the discussions to the real understandings and the realities of the school leaders themselves. So for us, in any case, based on that experience in the Vignette workshops and the data we collected, we figured out in a way that distributed leadership, according to our definition, was not really existing or fairly rare in the answers. So from that, we think that innovation and change in schools are possibly inhibited by the fact that this inclusion of all school actors is missing. So this is also crucial in understanding how reforms and how new ideas actually travel into an organization if there is a missing of an understanding that for change or for innovation, the involvement of all participants in an organization is needed, and that not only top-down structures like the school leader brings in new ideas and new reforms, and based on these ideas and reforms, the change will happen, or the innovation will go through the whole organization. And I think for this, it's crucial to have an understanding that if many of our participants do not really define leadership in a distributed understanding, or do not really stress out this kind of reading, this is something that you first of all have to work on before you think that innovation will take place in the organization. And the other thing is that while we had that experience in our workshop, we then thought through it, and with our design thinking approach, this fits really well, because this attempts just to do that, namely to get as many actors as possible around the table and to exchange new possibilities and perspectives for school issues in a constructive and solution-orientated way, and also a creative way. And this is why we think it fits so good to, first of all, start with a reflection using the vignette reading, and based on that understanding, how you can involve different actors in your organization and how you can bring them on in active positions. This is important to then do the next step and work on work on questions that are related to your development. The opportunity, and I think this is also interesting, to try out these new approaches through the project has provided us for important insights that we want to develop further with local partners in the future. So I think this is also something that was really helpful by participating in the Enables project.
Thank you so much for your insights, Livia. It was nice talking to you about our Erasmus project. Could you end by telling our listeners the main lessons you learned?
Well, main lessons, I think that is also always kind of, yes, not so easy to answer question. But for me, I think it's always fascinating to approach a research question in a more exploratory rather than hypothesis testing way. I'm not sure if I pronounced that word correctly, but by using vignettes or vignette reading, what we did as a method, we were able to map the leadership understandings of school leaders that we would not been able to get through interviews and questionnaires. And I think that is really important, recognizing this potential of the instrument. And I would say that was a valuable experience for us. And I further think that this could be a starting point for next research steps, because in the data that we have collected, it is very interesting and very clear that school leaders do have different readings of a vignette, and that you can see through their readings. And with readings, we mean what affected them, what resonated with them. You can see what is important for them in relation to questions of leadership. And I think this is a very good way to make implicit perspectives visible. And for that reason, I think that was a main learning for us in that project, that we can use vignettes, and especially the vignette reading, in this way. And another learning, I would say, was related to the workshop, which is, I think, similar to teaching, that there is no one-size-fits-all way to organize an ART, because it always depends on the people and their experience, and how you actually develop the workshop, and how the workshop goes and runs. So this openness should always be allowed and should always be crucial in the planning. And I think the reason why we actually recorded that podcast, and that was, I think, something that I tried to stress out a little bit, but I'm not sure if I made it that clear, is that being part in a European project always shows that even though that we are researchers working together on one question or one topic, the context of our very own countries, and especially in the educational area, the system logics influence a lot of how you can work with the ideas and the approaches that you developed in that project. And based on that context, you gain different results and experience. And I think that makes it so broad and so bright and so fruitful. On the one hand, to work together with colleagues who work in different contexts, and then to reflect on what effects the contexts have, and how you can overall use similar approaches and methods. And yes, I think that is always very stimulating, and I'm happy to be part of such an amazing group. And I think that it was a very good idea to say yes to that Enables project and the Erasmus Plus cooperation. Yes.
Thank you all for listening to our podcast. And in case you're interested in our research, don't hesitate to contact us or listen to our other videos.